Welcome to the Speakers Practice and our Friday Forum. Hi, I'm Adrienne McLean, the founder of the Speakers Practice. The Friday Forum is for business people. This is a free 30-minute session where you will meet amazing business professionals who have experience in a wide variety of topics. You will hear fabulous approaches from experts in their field. This is a free 30-minute session and the marketing system I follow, Book Yourself Solid. This webinar is an always have something free to offer event where you will meet specialists and hear real-life approaches. We're thrilled to have Kerryn Gamble with us today. Hi Kerryn.
Hello Adrienne.
Thanks for being here. Kerryn assists organisations identify the dysfunctions in their business by decoding their performance issues and providing a framework to integrate performance culture solutions. Kerryn helps her clients gain insights into how their current focus on structures and activities are contributing to a lack of performance. This work develops greater functionality and results by clearly defining what their business stands for, how this is experienced in all areas of the business, and the activities that drive their results. As a thought dynamics specialist, group facilitator, trainer and accredited profiler of metadynamics and extended DISC, Kerryn helps clients integrate organisational culture solutions so your team can thrive. So our topic today is why an out-of-shape workplace culture is like an out-of-shape body and what to do about it. Kerryn, before we get started on the topic, I'd love to know how you got started in this in the first place.
Thanks Adrienne. It's a pleasure to be here and a great question. Quite some years ago I completed high-level study helping people overcome both acute and chronic healthcare conditions, and to do this, especially in a hospital environment, it required the uniting of teams to achieve shared outcomes. And so the shift here has been that I help clients solve their acute and chronic workplace issues that impact on the health of the business and the people in the business. And I've had the opportunity to experience some wonderful workplace cultures and some not so wonderful workplace cultures. So I think of myself as a bit like a personal trainer for your workplace, culture. So I take people through a health assessment, we get some metrics and implement a structured program to help them get results and teach them the how to along the way so they can maintain the results.
Right. Well, let's get started on the questions. It sounds amazing. Well, the first question is, what are companies experiencing when the business is typically out of shape?
The business is experiencing similar things to when a person's out of shape. They're usually feeling a little bit flat and a bit down. There is an atmosphere of doing the bare minimum, and in a business context I describe it as an atmosphere of mediocrity. There's a clock in, clock out mentality. Other thoughts are along the lines of, well, we've always done it this way. Why should we change? That's not my responsibility. There can be a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of blame and excuses, and particularly in larger organisations, it can be a very silo-driven arrangement. So each department keeps to itself, and the result of all of this is reduced performance, lack of consistency in results. They might get a few okay results, but then they will dip down again. More miscommunication, and ultimately the retention rates are poorer because people aren't really that happy being there.
And is this where engagement is an issue?
It's a big issue, yes. People are attracted when the culture is fantastic. It attracts people who are really into that particular culture. When the culture is clearly defined, when it's a strong, clearly defined culture, that sends a very clear, specific message so that the people who are really into that are attracted to that and will approach that organisation. It tends, and the business culture is really the environment is made up of the people who are there, and think of it like the people are the DNA of the workplace culture. So their thinking and their behaviours and the way that they conduct themselves is what constitutes the culture, and so their level of engagement and their application into what they're doing and how they're doing it is very much reflected in the retention rates. So if they're not really that into it, if they see it as just a job, then you're right. There's a big issue with engagement there.
Is this due to the top tier management or is it other things?
You've heard the expression, the fish stinks from or rots from the head down.
Oh.
I don't know if you've heard that or not. A workplace culture that is excellent, it must begin with the top, whether that's the business owner, the CEO, the person at the top needs to champion the culture. So a culture that is in shape stems from the standards which must be set at the top, and that leader, the leader of the business, must walk the talk. A bit like parents and children, you have to, you can't say eat your broccoli and not eat your broccoli yourself. Because that's double standards, and that's where unwritten ground rules come in. So there are the ground rules where the organisation will say, okay, this is what we do and this is how we do it. The unwritten ground rules are, yes, well, we know that, but really this is what really happens. So if there's any difference in the way people conduct themselves when the boss is there compared to when the boss is not there, that's a big reflection upon the culture and how in shape it is.
Okay, so are there similarities between the business fitness and body fitness?
I believe there is. I believe there's a big correlation there. The body fitness, anyone who is in great shape will have great rituals around this, and rituals that will set up the rest of the day. They will have standards around what they will and won't do. So for instance, someone that's very committed to maintaining a level of fitness will have standards around how many days they might do their thing, whatever that is, yoga, swimming, walking, whatever it is, how many days a week, and they'll have criteria around that if I haven't been for X number of days in a row, if I haven't been for 3 days in a row, then no matter what, doesn't matter how hot or cold it is outside, I will go and do something. That they'll have rules in place around that reflect their commitment to achieving that. They have a level of accountability to themselves, and it's very much about doing the right thing even though they don't feel like it. So it becomes a non-negotiable. So in the business context, business fitness is about, for instance, say it's a customer sales or customer service team, they will be making those challenging phone conversations or the conversations to challenging clients and customers. The sales team will be making appropriate numbers of calls, or whatever their activities are, they'll be doing what they need to do. They will go above and beyond, so not just ticking the box, but doing the right thing, where they are applying their commitment. And so some of the things that they're doing might be above and beyond what their role typically encompasses, but because that is the right thing to do, they'll go out of their way to make sure that it happens. And ultimately, both businesses and bodies with better health and fitness, they do have more energy, and the people are more motivated. And when you've got more energetic, more motivated, engaged people, then performance is a lot better as well.
Absolutely. And so, like when somebody isn't fit, they're not able to do things. And so with business fitness, it's a similar correlation where there are problems happening and things just not working.
Yes, there will be more bushfire management in a business through whether it's miscommunication or poor planning, people perhaps not having clear direction about how what they do relates to the overall business vision and mission and their connection with that. So let's, for instance, if it was a real estate company, that you might have a a tenant that's not paid, that's in rental arrears, well, it's not about the rental arrears, it's about the impact that that then has on the landlord. So if the team are not following that up and doing the right thing, then it has a big flow-on effect that can stem beyond the business itself and through to their clients.
Okay, so what can be done to address a business that is out of shape?
Well, back to our fish analogy, it needs to start with the top. So the CEO or the business owner needs to be a champion of any workplace cultural transformation, because without that backing, any change, any results will not be sustainable. And it begins, so you've got to have that buy-in from the top. The next step is having a very strong and clearly defined culture, and I believe this is something that many businesses and organisations find challenging, to define their culture. And instead of having that as a focus, what many businesses do is they focus on the who's doing what and more of the implementation and the activities, so the people, who's doing what, and people get caught up in that day-to-day busyness. And there's a disconnect from what's really important and what the business is about. And that's what drives the activity. So if you have two organisations being clear about the mission, being clear about the values, what's really important to the business, and behavioural standards around that, is then what determines how you do what you do. So if you're talking about some financial institutions, they could have the same mission of financial freedom for their clients, but one might be targeting retirees and one might be targeting young couples, let's say. So the way they approach that, if their focus is on the environment and what's important in their mission, then the way they approach that in their marketing and their sales and the way they deliver their services will be very different. The technology they use, everything from their branding and their colours to their marketing campaigns, where their audience is found. So those types of activities and who's doing what in that context is why it's really important to get the other bits and pieces right in that top level environment.
Where does the culture fit in? What actually is it?
That's a great question. The way I define it is the business culture is the sum total of its people, and it's what they each bring with them. And in that context, culture is a dynamic, living system. So some people leave, new people come on board. That's why it's very clear to have that clearly defined culture with clear values, standards, so that people, one, are attracted to those things and they are going to be a match for the organisation. And when they begin with the organisation, they're very clear about the standards and expectations, to the point of the business and the organisation hiring and firing on those values. So that might mean that they may not pick the most technically competent person for the role. They will still have someone that is able and capable of doing the role, but they will go for the person that is the best cultural fit. Because talent you can train, but attitude you can't. And when I'm talking about values, in my experience, many businesses will have these lovely plaques on the wall and they'll have the values listed there. Some team members may be able to tell you what's on there, and they'll have them printed in annual reports and other materials. Many people can't tell you what they are. When there's behaviours, specific behaviours around them, so if their value was, say, respect, then what does that mean specifically? So apply that in the customer service department. What does that mean? So if there's clear standards with benchmarks around, say, email response time or phone call response times, and that's how they demonstrate respect, then it becomes a lot easier to have the conversation of, when someone's not living their values, it's then not a personal discussion, it's about the values. This is the business, this is what we stand for, these are our values, rather than it being a subjective discussion on the person. So they're all foundation and building blocks to the culture.
They're sort of measurable things.
Yes, benchmarks are really important. So to have benchmarks in every area of the business, so in the marketing, in the sales, in the delivery, whether that's a product, a service, whatever that might be, and that sets the standard.
Do these approaches work for both corporate and small businesses?
They do, yes. They work it's a very scalable approach. So, and in the work I do, I use a framework that has a structure in 4 areas, and I use the acronym ESIP. And E stands for environment, S for structure, I for implementation, and P for people, and in that order, and that's the order that we work through them. So whether it's for a large corporate or a small business, the environment needs to be the primary focus, and that might be just one person, or it might be many thousands of people. That the vision is clear, what the business is about, that their mission is clear, and their values are clear, and how those values are lived, and that everybody in that business knows the standards around those, and they know the consequences for not living the standards. Because the high performers, the people that really love that atmosphere, they will appreciate that, and they will thrive in that environment, and they will be more critical of a manager or leader who allows other team members to get away with poorer behaviour and poorer performance, because it impacts on them, and they can't do as well as what they know they can if they feel they're carrying other people in the organisation.
Yes.
So this approach, yes, it works for any size environment. ESIP, so environment, structure, implementation, and people. And in a larger organisation in particular, each department, so the finance department and the customer service department and marketing and sales, and perhaps they might have IT, they could have R&D, each of those departments then has its own ESIP, so they need to have their own mission for the department that is linked in with the overall bigger mission of the organisation, the bigger vision rather, so that they have a clear connection with the work that they do, that it becomes meaningful work to them, and they have a feeling that yes, we are contributing to something bigger than us, we have a purpose. And human beings love to feel part of something bigger than themselves, to feel that they're contributing.
Can you give us an example of how you've been able to implement this and how it works?
Sure. So typically we start in the E, and we start with the environment. Do they have a clear vision? Do they have a clear mission? And we look at what are the values. Sometimes people are not clear on them. Sometimes the values need redefining because businesses grow and evolve, and technology has impacted many business models, particularly in smaller businesses. They are more mobile, they can go global a lot more readily than say 10 years ago. So sometimes values need to be reassessed and realigned. And we do some brainstorming around this, and I'll ask some challenging questions. And it's like a health assessment for the business. And then I will ask the people in the room to identify what standards they want in the business. And so it comes from them. They will identify what they want, and they will identify what their expectations of each other are. If you know someone has your back, that there are standards around those, then you can do a lot more than if you have to watch over someone else, if you have to follow up all the time. So we start in the environment, and we get the key elements of the environment, and sometimes things like beliefs play a role. So if we go back to say one of the values was respect, and that might be on time for meetings, for instance. Some people can have beliefs that, yes, I agree with that, but it's okay, as long as I'm there within 10 minutes of the start time. They can have some beliefs that will impact on how they conduct themselves. From there, it's then translating that atmosphere to each department, each area within the business. And once those things are set, when they're very clear on that culture, and that also comes into their brand, that then determines, so if it's marketing, there are benchmarks around, say, lead generation.
Benchmarks are really important.
Yes, benchmarks. The funny thing about benchmarks is that when you start incorporating benchmarks into a business, when there is focus, suddenly the numbers start improving as if magically by themselves. When people start focusing on things, and I'm thinking of a sales team in particular, once they started getting some benchmarks around what was expected, things magically improved. So they didn't have any benchmarks, they didn't have any metrics, so they couldn't say how many inbound calls they received, how many outbound calls were made, how many people attended appointments, what their conversion rates were, and so they had very inconsistent results. So things like the sales process needs to be systemized, and it must have benchmarks. And after, it doesn't take very long until you figure out, right, we need to make this many calls, this needs to happen, that needs to happen to hit our target. They do it in their own way. There's still plenty of personality that goes into that. But there needs to be a system around that so that they can achieve great results. But a benchmark, it is about having something to strive for. And I came across an interesting concept of benchmarks that one fantastic workplace uses, and they have a 3-tier system for benchmarks. They have the bare minimum. They gave that a special name, which I can't remember at the moment. They had a bare minimum that this is minimum acceptable level, and if we hit this, we're okay. Then they had the benchmark, the middle one that they're aiming for, and then they had a top level, because there will always be a handful of high achievers and high performers that like to excel. So they set a super high achiever target. And that way they were able to celebrate making target, and it allowed for people who have different approaches to achieving targets.
Oh.
So they aimed for the middle one. They had a lower level figure, which was, well, if we hit this, we're still celebrating because we're doing well. And then a higher end one for people who just love to excel and do that bit more.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an internal benchmark. So for instance, an events company, if they had a benchmark around how many people they wanted to get to an event, then over a short period of time, they would figure out, okay, we need to invite X number of people to get X number of people registered, and from that we get X number of people who turn up on the day, so that you can reverse engineer what that benchmark needs to be. And then to flip it around for those businesses and organisations that want to be more innovative and embrace more innovation, we can then ask the question, does it need to be 1,000? What if they had 500 people who were a much better match? So that then changes the way they would market and the efforts that they would put into marketing and who they were marketing to, what they were saying, so that the people then in the room were people who were a lot more connected with whatever it is the event's about, particularly if there was going to be something for sale at the event, rather than so if the focus is on, bums on seats, then the outcome at the end of the event is going to be different if the people at the event are more qualified. So sometimes questioning the benchmarks can be a valuable exercise.
Look how they're comparing against others, the same industry.
Well, in that instance of the event company, if they traditionally felt that getting 1,000 people in the room for an event where they had things for sale at the end of the event, but what if it wasn't about the 1,000 people? They would have a conversion rate of whatever that might be. We get 1,000 people in the room, and on average we sell approximately this much, so they would work that out as a cost per head. But what if they had half the number of people that were twice as motivated or twice as interested? Then their profit per head may be many times that of having 1,000 people in the room. So the benchmark, if the benchmark is purely on numbers of people in the room, and they don't really care who it is, they just want to get people in the room, it's for what purpose? It depends on the why they're wanting to get people in the room. Now, if it was to sell something, then going to make a difference that the people in the room are the right people in the room.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's where questioning benchmarks can come in and be beneficial to review them.
To continue, what are your key markers for a business that is in shape?
They have high engagement. There is a very positive atmosphere. People are happy. A big one is they have a can-do attitude, and the people working there are compassionate, so they have a caring of others, and they love what they do. They often socialise beyond the actual work time because they love being together. And that they don't have to be in the same age range and the same age bracket, but they connect really well, that they bond, so they do enjoy spending time together outside the workplace as well. That's a key marker as well.
Fantastic. Kerryn, the question that I ask each of our presenters is, as a business owner, what's your advice about promoting your business by speaking?
I believe speaking is one of the most significant ways to impact, to influence, to inspire others. Speaking is a very powerful way to leverage your message and your brand, and it really is an essential tool in your toolkit for anybody who is a leader or a business owner. It's a must-have. And I get that not everybody is comfortable speaking. It is something that, it's a skill that is learned.
And is there any special things that you do? Do you go to business forums or associations?
So I use speaking to speak at business networking events, and I do spend a fair bit of time at the front of the room training and facilitating.
Oh, yes.
So with my clients, that's where I spend most of my time speaking. Networking events is a terrific forum for speaking about your business. I'm a fan of running workshops. I have a bit of a bias of running workshops and training sessions. I love to do that. I believe it's such a great fit for people who are wanting to promote their business, because going back to the culture, you are your brand, you are part of the culture. So if you're up the front of the room speaking in an authentic way about something that you care about, the people who are resonating with your message and with you are the people that will be interested in speaking to you further and perhaps connecting with you beyond that speaking engagement.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you. Would you like to speak about your business and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. So my business is culture.Corporate, and my mission is to transform 10,000 workplaces in the next 10 years. So to improve the workplace so that the people there can thrive. And that's something I feel very passionate about. We spend around 70% of our waking hours at work. So I believe the work environment is a big contributing factor to people's well-being and happiness overall. And so that's my focus, and I love working with forward-thinking businesses, people, professionals that really want to make a difference in their workplace environment, that want to take their workplace culture and their brand to the next level so that they can differentiate themselves in their marketplace. Because at the end of the day, that is the one thing that nobody else can replicate, is your culture. And that's why some of the biggest well-known companies that have these outstanding cultures that people talk about, so Apple was talked about for many years, they will happily tell you what systems they use and how they do what they do, because they know that it's not about the systems, it's about the people. And that is what makes them who they are. So that's, and one organisation that implemented a culture program over, it was about 18 months. And they found, and this is very telling of the businesses that I work with, is that performance is not related to the number of people, it's related to the attitude and the rituals, so the behaviours they do repeatedly day in, day out. That's the difference with performance. So there have been plenty of studies done on engagement and performance. So I think people are pretty aware of the impact of engagement on performance. So creating that space where people can thrive is what I'm passionate about.
Fantastic. Wow. Well, Kerryn, thanks so much for your time. It's really been fascinating to hear about what you're doing and your approach to getting businesses into shape. And certainly you can see the correlation between out of shape businesses and out of shape bodies. So thank you so much for your time and for being with us today.
Thank you, Adrian. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay. Well, thanks also to our listeners, and have a great fortnight, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Friday forum. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.